Long-term care and long-term care planning is really not a subject that is a fun one to think about. Nobody wants to think of themselves as needing long-term care. But as we age, 70% of us will need some form of long-term care, statistically speaking. And so as we age, we tend to lose some of our independence, whether for physical reasons or cognitive reasons, and we need assistance. So long-term care can be very expensive. And so in this video, we're going to talk about some of the innovative ways to approach long-term care. Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Financial Fast Lane. My name is Lane Martinson. And so with this video, and on the subject of long-term care, I actually have a special guest, Alicia Barnett. Now, Alicia actually did a webinar for a group the other night. And so I'm going to share the bulk of what that webinar was all about. And Alicia is someone who's, for more than 20 years, long-term care planning is basically all she does. I mean, she is an expert in long-term care planning. And so some of the traditional long-term care insurance policies, they are undesirable for a number of reasons. They are a use it or lose it type of policy. So you're basically paying premiums for something that you hope you never have to use. And so there are some newer types of asset-based long-term care solutions that we're going to learn about here in this video that are quite different, where it's not use or lose it. If you don't use it, you basically get your money back, either some of it or all of it, depending on the policy, or it passes on as a death benefit to your family, but you're not really losing out. And then if you need long-term care, there's a really nice benefit to cover the costs. And so now here is Alicia Barnett.
Thank you so much, Lane. It's a pleasure to be here. Long-term care is a passion of mine. I know that's probably strange to some people when they hear that, because it's such a doom and gloom subject, but it is something that needs to be addressed. And we're going to talk, like Lane said, a little bit differently about long-term care. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get started today. One of the things that I want you to think of, just because we don't have open lines today, as we move along through the presentation, is what is the first thing that really comes to mind when hearing long-term care? I know typically when I'm in a live audience, I hear nursing home, expensive, things of that nature. But what does that mean to you? How many of you have actually gone through a long-term care event with a loved one? Think about what that experience was like. Did you provide the care? Did you coordinate the care? Was it rewarding? Was it difficult? Did they have a plan in place, or did you reactively deal with it? So today we're going to kind of talk to a couple different stages of this, and hopefully you'll leave here with a better understanding of what this is and what are some of the options of paying for care, and how might you be able to essentially add more efficiencies to your plan. All right, so there are a lot of myths when it comes to long-term care planning, and I'm going to talk about 4 major myths today before we really get into the nitty-gritty. With that being said, the first major myth is it won't happen to me. If we were in a live audience, I'd ask you to raise your hands, and more than half of you would probably raise your hand and say it won't happen to you. And here's the problem with that. People tend to downplay their personal risk and often assume that others face a greater risk of needing care. And the reality is the risk is much higher. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. All right, so our second myth today is Medicare and Medicaid have me covered. So many people think the government's going to pay for care. Medicare is actually only covering up to 100 days. There are certain stipulations that go along with this. For example, you have to be hospitalized at least 3 days. It covers up to 100 days in a skilled facility. You have to be getting better. So it's really short-term care, not long-term care. Again, see, these are some of the stipulations that Medicare will require in order to pay for those 100 days. And also, there are a lot of misconceptions on how you qualify for Medicaid. Medicaid is means tested, meaning you have to spend down your assets, and basically be poor in order to receive benefits from Medicaid. It's also not in the home. So most people, I don't know about you, I want to receive care in the home. So Medicaid is typically only in skilled care nursing homes. So I don't know about you, but I spent a lot of time in my life building out a future to obtain certain goals, and I don't want to spend down my assets to give up control. I'd rather receive that care in the home. So again, a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the government taking care of us. All right, our next myth. Our third myth is that's what my savings are for. So most people don't understand how expensive long-term care is. So what I would encourage you to do, there's a fantastic website. So if you have a pen and a piece of paper, longtermcare.gov. If you write that down, there is a lot of information on that website about who needs care, how long they need care. There's some statistics. Where do people receive care, things of that nature. It's a great little resource that the government puts out. And then more specifically, there is a tab that you can click on that says cost of care. When you click on that tab, it's actually going to redirect you back to the Genworth Cost of Care survey. What's fantastic about this website is you can actually type in your zip code or your city, and it's going to pull up those local costs. So here we have an example. Let me move this little screen here for a minute. So this is actually the Phoenix area. So I pulled up y'all's local cost. Notice here how expensive it is. So in 2021, nursing home is going to cost you roughly around $8,000 a month on average, and there are obviously above average facilities. Then you've got assisted living that's running around 4,000, adult daycare with around 2,000, and then home health care around $6,000 a month. Typically, what we see in most places is home health care and assisted living is going to cost you about half as much. Home care is a little bit more expensive in your area. And most people just don't realize that by default their money is their plan. So it's good to be able to pull up that local area and see how much costs really care. Here's the other thing as well is we really don't know when we're going to need care. So if we're young, we may not need care for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So here I've shown you there's a neat little slide on that website and you can actually project future costs. So I did it 20 years out just to give you an idea of how expensive care can be. So in 2041, check this out, nursing home's going to run on average around $14,000 a month. Assisted living's about half that at $71.79 a month. And then home care is a whopping $10,761 a month. And if you want round the clock care, right now, currently, it's around $12,000 a month. So it's pretty expensive. And again, most people don't realize how much it costs. What I would encourage you to think about is, during this presentation, if something were to happen tomorrow, which asset would you liquidate to pay for care? So again, by going through this exercise, what you'll realize is that if you haven't allocated something, you've allocated everything. Your money is your plan, which isn't a bad thing, but let's see if we can add some efficiencies to your plan. So let's move along to our next myth. My last one, and I say this kind of jokingly, my family will take care of me. Does your family know this? Here's some of the problems with the demographic in today's society. Take my family, for example. There's 4 kids. My dad unfortunately passed away at the beginning of the pandemic. My mom was his caregiver. She lives about an hour away from me. My oldest brother is about 10 minutes away. My sister is about 3 hours away, and my youngest brother is about 4.5, 5 hours away. My mom got COVID, for example. And even though my brother was 10 minutes away, he drives a truck. He wasn't around. I had to drive, which I didn't mind. I love my mother, but an hour one way to go make sure that she had food, to make sure that she was okay. I could see her through the glass door, to make sure if I needed to take her medication. I went down every day for 2 weeks. So realistically, what does that look like for working parents, or say I'm in my 60s and my mom at some point needs care? Will I have my grandchildren that I'm taking care of? So again, what does that look like? And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few minutes, but we love our families and we will take care of them, but there are better alternatives. So again, we're going to talk about long-term care a little differently today. So we're going to talk about the great income gap. So what would you say, think about this, what would you say the goal is when climbing a mountain? Most people would probably say to get to the top, right? Actually, It's to get down the mountain successfully without breaking your neck, without breaking your back. So many baby boomers have reached the top. Around 2017, they've completed the accumulation phase. They're starting to retire and they're entering the distribution phase. So that's why we're seeing a lot about retirement income and retirement income strategies, getting back down that mountain. So, what are some of the issues that affect the descent or the distribution phase? So, getting back down that mountain, maybe having enough retirement income. So, we don't want to outlive our assets. We're in a super low interest rate environment. I mean, check out the stock market the last couple of weeks. Boy, it's been kind of crazy. Healthcare cost, but more specifically, income stream to pay for care. So, in your retirement years, what would be the reason that your income needs would suddenly skyrocket? Let's say, for example, you're living well on $100,000 a year. Suddenly, you need to take an additional $70,000 out. So, on top of that 100, you're spending 170,000. What do we think would cause that to happen? So most would say some kind of health issue, right? Or maybe you or your spouse have become frail and you need some type of assistance, maybe in your home or in some type of care setting. So where would you get that additional, in our example, $70,000 a year? So how do we fill that gap? So when your income needs suddenly skyrocket, where do you get the income to fill that gap? So many are going to liquidate other investments such as managed accounts, annuities, cash or cash equivalent, or what I like to call rainy day funds, your conservative assets. Long term care is an income issue, it's not an asset issue. So, more questions here. So, will this affect your retirement income plan? Is it going to affect you? Will your assets last? If you begin withdrawing money out of your accounts that you help manage, is this going to affect you? Can you get a rate of return high enough in that example to give you an additional $70,000 per year for that entire length of your illness that could last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? We just don't know. So this is a diagram that describes what we call the great income gap. So let's say you retire at age 65 and you're living comfortably on $100,000 a year. But let's say at age 75, you begin to have some health issues. Most people can absorb some of that cost because they've planned well. However, let's say at age 80, you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's and you need care for 10 years. So at age 90, you pass away. That's what we call the great income gap. So we need one more piece to fill that gap. All right, so what are some of the concerns that we're facing in today's world? So these numbers are 2016, which we can only imagine how much greater they are now. But in 2016, there was 5.4 million Americans diagnosed with Alzheimer's. 1 in 9 people over the age of 65 is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. By mid-century, one person every 33 seconds is diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And then these numbers are expected to triple. And I've already seen some numbers which are even greater. So we're already seeing those numbers rise exponentially. So big problems ahead with Alzheimer's. All right, so many of you have heard the statistics that 70% of people over the age of 65 will require some type of long-term care. And 1 in 5 are going to actually need care for at least 5 or more years. Here's the problem, and I said this earlier. If we were in a room, I asked you how many people of you would raise your hand if you thought you would need care. Most people believe they're in the 30%. That's the biggest problem, and because they believe it will never happen to them, they're never going to need care, and therefore they don't put a plan in place because again they don't think they're going to need it. Here's what we know, that most men and women make decisions to have a plan to protect the people that they love, the people that it's truly going to affect if care is needed. So those are some of the consequences of not properly planning, and being unprepared for extended health care can actually have a big impact, not just on you, but on your family. For example, your spouse may feel obligated to be the caregiver, or maybe her financial situation or his financial situation will dictate it. And the stress and responsibility of being a primary caregiver can make you chronically ill. For example, I watched my mother as she took care of my father become chronically ill. She started having back problems. Wasn't sleeping. I mean, really could barely get from one room to the other because it's very difficult to take care of people. And when you're helping them transfer from one place to the other, again, it can make you chronically ill. The other thing is, if your spouse can't help, then typically someone else in the family will step in. And it's typically going to be the oldest daughter in closest proximity. Again, given my example, I drove an hour one way to go help take care of my mother. Imagine what's going to happen when she needs full-time care. Think my brother, who's 10 minutes away, is going to take care of mom? Maybe, maybe not. But again, oldest daughter, closest proximity, maybe she'll give up her job and she'll move in with you, or maybe you'll move in with her, as any decent child will. Your life doesn't end, someone else's does. And I've always said this, long-term care doesn't bring families together, it tears families apart. So one of the reasons that I have a plan is so that my two sons will talk to each other when I die. I don't want them taking care of me. I want them to supervise the care rather than provide the care. All right, so how do we create an income stream to fill the gap? There are really two significant ways to mitigate or backstop against the long-term care risk. You've got traditional long-term care and asset-based long-term care. So Lane mentioned traditional long-term care at the beginning. I like to use the analogy owning your contract versus renting it. So traditional long-term care is like renting. It's not a horrible thing. It's going to be the cheapest way to buy the most amount of long-term care. However, rates can go up. If you don't use it, you lose it, and there's no exit strategy. Whereas you've got the asset-based long-term care products, and we'll go through some examples and really what that concept means here in a minute. But those products have a benefit whether you live, whether you die, or whether you quit. Again, would you rather own your contract or rent your contract? All right, so let's talk a little bit about concepts. So if you were to self-fund, this is an example of an option that may work for you. This is the concept of asset-based long-term care. So if this is your portfolio, most people are going to have moderate, aggressive, and conservative assets. The government has allowed certain life insurance or annuity contracts to be accessed while alive, tax-free for long-term care expenses if you need care. So by using this option, you could reposition an asset or income into a policy that's going to pay specifically or provide an income stream that's going to pay specifically for long-term care expenses. And that will help you avoid pulling the money from the other investments from those moderate or aggressive or conservative assets. It's kind of like an umbrella policy. So again, it will help provide an income stream to pay for care. And then each of the carriers that are out there will provide additional funds to pay for care. So again, you're repositioning an asset. If you need care, you've got a tax-free benefit from an annuity or life insurance contract that's going to pay out tax-free for LTC, and you'll get some additional money to pay for care. And we're going to go through some examples and case studies of how this works. So how can we fund an asset-based long-term care? There are 4 different ways. We've got highly appreciated non-qualified annuities, cash or cash equivalent, or what I like to call dead assets, rainy day funds, your conservative assets. Qualified dollars. I know a lot of people save money. A disproportionate amount of people save money in 401ks and any of those pre-tax dollar accounts because our employers match, or it's just the easiest way to save for retirement. And then last but not least, income. Not everyone is in a position to reposition a lump sum dollar amount to pay for these type of policies. So you can use income to fund a plan. So let's take a look at some case studies. So here we have a 70-year-old male and female. We've got a $150,000 existing annuity. They don't need it for income. They don't have a long-term care plan in place. So we're going to reposition this or 1035 exchange this money from company A to company B. It's a tax-free exchange because of the way that it's filed. And we're going to, again, move it from our right pocket to our left pocket. That 150,000 is going to give us $60,000 roughly per year per person, tax-free income stream specifically for care. The 150,000 is going to provide $450,000 day one for long-term care. Think of this as a tax-free long-term care savings account. So you can draw up to that 60,000 per year until the bank account is gone. Again, it's all tax-free because of the government allowing us to access these specifically for care. Sorry, the pollen's coming out in North Carolina, so it's getting me. So 150 turns into 450. So essentially, by moving your money from your right pocket to your left pocket, a dollar turns into $3 for care. If you wake up an angel and you don't need care, someone's going to get that $150,000 back. Again, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And if you change your mind, you can get some or all of your money back depending on when you take it. And here's the cool thing is if you invested 150,000 at 5% return on tax deferred money, it would take 22 years to equal 450,000. If it's taxable money, it would take 29 years to equal 450,000. So they understood they probably wouldn't earn enough interest to get that 450,000 in their lifetime for care. So again, it's a great way to mitigate against the risk, and if they don't use it, they don't lose it. All right, let's talk about our second example, cash or cash equivalent. Here we have a CD. We have a 60-year-old male and female. We've got $200,000 sitting in the bank. We don't need it for income. We don't have a long-term care plan in place. This is their emergency money. So we're going to buy a life insurance policy, which is the base policy, to pay for care if we need it and add a rider that's going to extend the care for the rest of the client's life. So what does that look like? So for $200,000, it's going to provide $90,000 roughly per person, lifetime income stream specifically for care. If they both need care, it's going to be roughly $181,000 for both. And again, this is a lifetime income stream. So if they needed care for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, that's going to pay for care as long as they live. It would take a 45% return on their investment to guarantee $90,000 per year for one person, lifetime income stream. If they both need care, it would take 90% to generate 181,000. So it'd be pretty tough to do in this interest rate environment we're in. And it would, again, these are guarantees. So $200,000 if they live and need long-term care, $90,000 per person, lifetime income stream specifically for care. If they wake up an angel and don't need care, we've got a $227,000 death benefit. So again, if they live and need long-term care, they have a benefit. If they die and don't need long-term care, they have a death benefit. If they change their mind, there are some cash accumulation value that they can walk away with. All right, so let's take a look at our third example. Is everyone familiar with required minimum distributions? So required minimum distributions are RMDs. Unfortunately, we're all going to have to take one day or another. Now, I think of the age is up to 72. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lane. But essentially, we're never going to get out of paying Uncle Sam. We're going to have to take money, even if we don't want to. So here we have a 70-year-old male and female. We're going to use our required minimum distributions to help fund the plan. So they don't have to take the RMDs yet, but they will eventually. We're going to start them early. Taxes are on sale. And we're going to reposition this so that we can get tax-free benefits for long-term care. So we're going to transfer $200,000 from our 401k into a product that's going to give us a 10% bonus. So day one, we're going to get $20,000. And each year, the insurance company is going to take $22,000 out of that policy and fund a life contract that's going to give you tax-free benefits. So here's the kicker. You're never going to get out of paying Uncle Sam. So that $22,000 a year is a taxable distribution, but it can count towards your RMDs or your required minimum distribution. And we're spreading that tax liability out over 10 years. And that's going to buy a policy that's going to cover a life insurance death benefit and a lifetime benefit for long-term care purposes. So what does that look like? If they need care, it's going to provide $52,560 per person each, lifetime income stream specifically for care. If they both need care, it's going to provide $105,000. Again, lifetime income stream, all tax-free. It's essentially turning your taxable dollars into tax-free dollars for care. And here's the good news too. If you wake up an angel and you don't need care, your beneficiaries are going to get a minimum of $146,000 death benefit, tax free. So live and need long-term care, 200,000 is going to buy $52,000 per person. Lifetime income stream specifically for care, or 105,000 if they both need it. Again, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. Someone is going to get a $146,000 death benefit. It's not quite as much as what you put in, but remember that $200,000 as it stands, if it's in qualified money, is going to be taxable. So any money you take out is going to be taxed. So we're essentially helping out the beneficiaries by providing a tax-free death benefit. So it's a great way to utilize RMDs, especially if they don't ever need those. And again, we're going to be able to satisfy some of our RMDs and reduce our taxable expenses down the road. All right, so last but not least, we've got income. So again, not everyone wants to reposition a lump sum. Here we have an example of a 62-year-old female. She's a high income earner. She wants to retire in roughly 10 or 15 years at most. It's going to cost her $11,010 a year. Now, here's the beautiful thing. This is an asset-based plan, so these premiums are guaranteed. They're never going to go up, whereas on the traditional plans, those can go up. In fact, I've seen plans go up from anywhere from 5% to 150%. Now, I think some of the newer plans are priced a little bit better, but unfortunately, we can't guarantee that those won't go up. Whereas on these types of plans, that's never going to go up. And you can pay these with income over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. We've got a 20 pay. We can do a lifetime pay. So from a cash flow perspective, we can stretch them out even more. But in this example, she's going to pay $11,010 per year for 15 years. The policy will then be paid up. That's going to provide her $60,000 per year, tax free, 6-year income stream specifically for care. She's young, she's 62, right? So we're going to put 3% compound inflation on there. We need that to grow because you saw the cost of care when we showed the Phoenix area, how much more it was down the road. So we want that $60,000 to grow. That 3% compound inflation will increase that benefit each year as long as she lives and even when she needs care. Now, if she dies and doesn't use it, it's going to provide a death benefit of $165,151. So it's going to basically give somebody her money back if she never uses it. Again, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. And these are not, you're not buying them specifically for the death benefit. You're buying them for the long-term care. And oh, by the way, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. Again, a little different story than the traditional long-term care plans that you pay into year after year. And then if you never use it, you lose it. So it's a great alternative to those products, a little bit more expensive, but look at the guarantees that you get. And she didn't really care about the cash value or death benefit. She was really, it was kind of a bonus if she never needed it. She was just really concerned with that shortfall of income and wanted the guarantees of, again, that guaranteed premium, because when you're older, sometimes you have fixed income. So she wanted to know specifically what she was going to have to pay, and she wanted it paid up in 15 years. So it's a great way, again, to mitigate against that long-term care risk. It's going to cover all of these policies are going to cover home care. They're going to cover assisted living. They're going to cover nursing home, adult daycare. They're fully comprehensive, and you're going to be able to use that for any type of care that you specifically need. So again, a great alternative to the traditional long-term care plans. All right, so what are our next steps? You want to begin having the talk with those in your life that you love and that make decisions on your behalf. What I would suggest, I would meet with Lane and the gang to go over all of the options. It's really not a one size fits all approach. 5 different people may go with 5 different carriers. It's going to depend on how you want to fund the plan, your health. It's going to depend on the benefits that you're wanting. Again, qualified, non-qualified, income. There's just a number of different options out there, and even the ones that I gave you tonight, there are even more options that are available that are different types of policies as well. These are just some of the main ways to mitigate against the risk, but there are a number. So definitely explore all of those options since it's not a one size fits all approach. And then, of course, after you've decided, You certainly want to tell your loved ones which plan you put in place so that they can follow your wishes. Whatever you decide, do it now. You've never been younger and healthier than you are today. So with that being said, Lane, I've wrapped up.
Thank you again, Alicia, and I hope everyone found some benefit in this video. If you'd like more information, you can go to thefinancialfastlane.com, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Financial Fast Lane.